Imagine waking up one morning, looking at the person you've been married to for like 50 years, and just seeing an absolute stranger.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is terrifying.
It really is, right.
Mm.
Or, I mean, imagine looking in the mirror and having absolutely no concept of who is staring back at you.
Just a total blank.
Exactly. Because when we think about who we are, our identity, we usually anchor it to our memories.
Right, the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah, our relationships, the experiences that shaped us, it all feels so incredibly solid.
Until it isn't.
Right. Until a disease like Alzheimer's or severe dementia physically erases those memories.
Yeah, when the actual biological hardware of the brain deteriorates.
Right, with the amyloid plaques and tau tangles, to the point where a person literally forgets their own name or, even how to swallow.
Which is just devastating.
It is, and it forces this really terrifying, profound question. If the memories are physically erased, does the original identity still exist?
Right, like when the disease wipes out the self, where do they actually go?
Exactly. And, well, that is the core mission for our deep dive today. So, welcome everyone. We are looking at this stack of incredibly fascinating sources that sit right at this intersection of modern neuroscience, memory loss, and profound Buddhist philosophy.
Specifically the concept of the five aggregates, which we'll get into.
Yes, we will definitely unpack that. We want to figure out if our mind is, merely a 100% byproduct of the physical brain.
And we're also going to explore how understanding the mind as this lightning-fast series of binary ones and zeros can completely revolutionize how you practice mindfulness.
Is seriously mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
But, okay, I want to ground this in some logic first.
Sure, lay it on me.
Okay, let's unpack this. If a physical disease in the brain cells destroys our memories, our thoughts, our emotional regulation.
Right, all the cognitive functions.
Yeah, doesn't that inherently prove that our entire mind and identity is just a biological output of the brain?
That is the big question.
I mean, if the physical brain rots and the mind disappears as a direct result, how can anything possibly exist beyond that biological hardware?
Well, I mean, that makes total sense. That is the logical conclusion drawn from classical neuroscience, for sure.
Right, because neuroscience views the brain as a generator.
Exactly. The brain is the generator. If you smash a computer's hard drive and motherboard, the operating system doesn't just, exist in the ether.
Right, it's just gone.
It's totally gone. Neuroscience maps specific cognitive functions to specific real estate in the brain. So for memory and spatial navigation, we look heavily at the hippocampus.
Okay, the hippocampus, that's the hardware.
Right. And when neurodegenerative diseases atrophy the hippocampus, the capacity to record, organize, and retrieve memory just breaks down.
The output completely stops.
Exactly. From a purely materialist standpoint, the machine is broken, therefore the mind, which they argue is generated by the machine, is gone.
But the sources we are diving into today introduce a completely different framework.
Yes, a very different way of looking at it, coming from Buddhist philosophy.
Right.
Yeah.
And they basically suggest that the hardware breaking down doesn't necessarily mean the signal itself is gone.
Which is such a wild concept to wrap your head around.
It really is.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile that? How do we reconcile the undeniable physical evidence of a rotting hippocampus with the idea of a consciousness that somehow survives it?
Well, the bridge between those two ideas really lies in understanding how Buddhist philosophy deconstructs a human being.
Okay, break that down for me.
It doesn't view you as a single, solid entity. Instead, it sees you as a temporary combination of five aggregates.
The khandhas, right?
Exactly, the khandhas. And there are five of them: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness.
Okay, let's actually walk through those because this feels like the absolute blueprint for the entire argument.
It definitely is. So let's start with form.
Well, form seems pretty obvious, right? That's just a physical body, the brain, the actual neurons.
Yeah, right. Form is the biological hardware. Then you have feeling. But in this specific context, feeling isn't an emotion like sadness or joy.
Oh, it isn't.
No, it's just the raw sensory data. Is this input pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? That's it.
Ah, okay. Just the raw data of the experience.
Exactly. Then comes perception, or sanya. This one is crucial. This is the aggregate responsible for recognizing and labeling things.
Okay, so sanya is the part of you that knows, like, a red light means stop.
Yes, or the part that instantly recognizes your spouse's face when you look at them.
Okay, what's next?
Next are mental formations. These are the stories, the reactions, and the choices you actually make based on that initial perception.
So I see my spouse, that's perception. and then I feel happy and decide to go hug them, that's a mental formation.
You nailed it. And finally, the fifth one is consciousness, which is just the fundamental awareness that illuminates the other four.
The fundamental awareness. Oh, so when we talk about Alzheimer's wiping out a person's memory, we are specifically talking about the destruction of that Sanya aggregate, right? The perception and labeling function.
Yes, exactly. The disease destroys Sanya.
But wait, how does that actually interact with the physical brain? Because if Sanya is just this philosophical concept, why does a physical plaque in the brain destroy it?
Because in Buddhism, these aggregates aren't just floating around randomly. They cascade and interact in a very specific mechanical way.
Mechanical how?
Well, form, which is the physical brain and the sense organs, has to interact with the external world to trigger a feeling.
Okay.
And that feeling then triggers perception. So the Sanya aggregate fundamentally relies on the biological hardware to actually operate in the physical world.
Oh, I see. It uses the physical brain as a tool.
Exactly. Sanya uses the physical neural pathways of your hippocampus to retrieve the label, my wife, when your eyes see her face.
Right. And so when the hippocampus is literally destroyed by dementia,
The Sanya aggregate just cannot function in this reality anymore. The tool is broken.
okay, so what does this all mean? It is kind of like the brain is a radio receiver.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. You have this physical box sitting on a table. It has a speaker, some wires, a tuning dial. But the mind, or consciousness, is the actual radio wave transmitting through the air.
The unseen signal.
Yeah. The radio wave contains all the music. And if I take a hammer and just smash that physical radio to pieces, obviously the music stops playing in the room.
Right. The output is demonstrably gone. The speaker is completely silent.
But the radio waves themselves haven't vanished from the air at all. The broadcast is still happening. There's just no intact receiver left to pull those waves down and translate them into physical sound waves.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. The critical implication here is that the brain is just the biological interface.
The processor.
Exactly. It's the processor. But it is not the owner or the ultimate source of the mind.
That is a massive distinction.
It really is. Things like your ability to remember, your complex thoughts, your emotional reactions, all those perceptions and mental formations, they absolutely require the physical brain to express themselves in 3 dimensions.
Right, you need the radio to hear the music.
Yes. Without the intact hardware, the interface crumbles. But the continuous stream of consciousness itself, that fundamental energy of the mind, remains completely independent of that decaying biological tissue.
Which honestly reframes a really terrifying medical reality into something incredibly profound. The radio is broken, but the broadcast just continues.
It is a very hopeful way to view it, actually.
It is. But here's my next question. If consciousness is this continuous radio wave that operates independently of our physical brain structure, how can we actually prove that to ourselves right now, while our brains are still healthy and intact?
That is the million-dollar question. And the sources suggest that the best laboratory for testing this is actually meditation.
Okay, meditation.
But they also point out a massive fundamental error in how most people try to observe their own minds when they meditate.
Oh, I bet I make this error. What is it?
The error stems from a really deep misunderstanding of how the brain naturally operates. When people sit down to meditate, what do they usually try to do?
I mean, I try to find an empty mind.
Yeah.
I try to stop thinking.
Exactly. People search for an empty mind. They want to forcibly find this peaceful, quiet gap between their thoughts.
Yeah, I'm essentially trying to just turn the radio off entirely.
Right. And anyone who has tried that knows it fails miserably.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
You sit there trying to think about literally nothing, and suddenly your brain is aggressively reminding you about your laundry.
Yes. Or a weird email from your boss.
Or some awkward conversation you had like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It really feels like the harder you try to find silence, the louder the noise gets.
And from a neurological perspective, that makes perfect sense.
Why is that?
Because when you stop engaging in active, focused tasks, your brain defaults to something called the default mode network, or the DMN.
The default mode network.
Yeah. It is this interconnected group of brain regions that evolution specifically designed to constantly simulate the past and the future.
Oh, so it's trying to keep me safe by constantly worrying.
Exactly. The DMN is a relentless meaning-making machine. It does not want quiet. It wants to problem solve.
So trying to force it into a silent void is basically fighting millions of years of biology.
Yes, you are fighting your own evolutionary wiring. But more importantly, from the Buddhist perspective of ultimate reality, the task is actually impossible.
Impossible. Why?
Because that quiet gap you're looking for between thoughts fundamentally does not even exist.
Wait, hold on. There is no gap. But my thoughts feel distinctly separate from each other. Like I think about what I'm having for lunch, and then I think about work. There feels like a transition space in there somewhere.
It definitely feels like a transition, but it isn't an empty space. Nature's reality operates at a speed that our macro perception just can't easily register.
Okay, so what is actually happening?
It functions entirely on a binary of arising and ceasing, a relentless, lightning-fast rhythm of 1 and 0.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why a 1 and a 0?
It all comes down to the concept of Anicca, which means impermanence, and the fact that consciousness is entirely dependent on an object.
Dependent on an object.
Yeah. Consciousness isn't like a flashlight that stays on when you put it in a dark drawer. It only exists in the actual act of illuminating something.
Oh, I see. You can't just see, you have to see a bird.
Exactly. You cannot just hear, you have to hear a siren. So a moment of perception arises, right? You hear a bird chirp. That specific moment of consciousness, that is the one.
And it is inextricably tied to the sound of the bird.
Exactly.
And since the sound of the bird doesn't last forever, the consciousness tied to it can't last forever either.
You got it. The absolute microsecond the sound of the bird ends, that specific instance of consciousness that was perceiving it loses its object. Therefore, it must die.
It ceases.
It ceases. It drops to a 0.
Okay, but if it drops to 0, why don't I experience a gap?
Because the brain is constantly receiving new stimuli. The very instant that state hits 0, a brand new instance of consciousness instantly arises to perceive the very next moment.
Like maybe the feeling of the wind on your arm.
Right. That becomes the new one. So it is this continuous, unbroken chain of 1 0 1 0 happening so incredibly fast that it creates the illusion of a solid, continuous self.
Wow. Much like thousands of individual still photographs moving rapidly through a projector to create the illusion of a seamless movie.
That is the perfect analogy. It's just individual frames moving so fast you can't see the breaks.
Our sources also emphasize this concept of no zero inside a zero,
Yes, that is a huge point.
which implies that when a state hits 0, it is an absolute final end. There's no lingering essence of the previous thought hiding inside that empty space.
Exactly. It is completely void of any characteristics.
And if a 0 has no characteristics, you literally can't observe it. Because the very act of trying to observe the 0 or bathe in that emptiness requires a new moment of consciousness.
A new one, exactly.
A new one to do the observing. That is a total paradox.
You've hit on the exact reason why chasing an empty mind is a philosophical trap. You are trying to observe a lack of observation.
Which is impossible.
Totally impossible. When it's a 0, it is purely a 0. It is fully dead. By trying to stubbornly hold on to a state of blank emptiness, you are fighting the fundamental mechanical nature of how consciousness operates.
It's like trying to stop the movie reel from spinning by grabbing the hot film with your bare hands.
Yes, and it doesn't lead to insight, it just leads to massive frustration.
Okay, wait, here's where it gets really interesting for the listener. If the default mode network is constantly firing, and my consciousness is biologically and philosophically bound to this rapid-fire 1010 rhythm, how do I actually train my mind?
Right, what's the practical application?
Yeah. If we can't silence the DMN or sit in a void, what is the actual mechanism for true mindfulness here? Have we just been doing it all wrong?
Well, the mechanism has to shift from suppression to pure observation. The practice of vipassana or insight meditation isn't about stopping the one from happening.
You can't stop it anyway.
Right. Instead, it's about training your awareness to be sharp enough to spot the exact microsecond the one turns into a 0. You are just watching the rhythm of arising and ceasing.
But practically speaking, how do you isolate that rhythm?
What do you mean?
Well, if I'm meditating and, say, my leg falls asleep, my default mode network is going to immediately blast me with a narrative.
Oh, for sure.
It's going to say, why does my knee hurt? Am I sitting wrong? Am I going to damage your nerve? When is this timer going to go off?
Right, the anxiety spiral.
Yeah, that is a massive block of noise, not a clean 1 and 0. How do you spot a 0 and all that?
So that huge block of noise is your mental formations aggregate just running totally wild.
Okay.
Historically, a lot of traditions use samatha, which is concentration meditation, to deal with this. They'll use a mantra or just intense focus on the breath as an anchor.
Like a tool to drown out the noise of the knee pain.
Exactly, effectively drowning it out. But the sources for this deep dive argue that true mindfulness, actual insight, doesn't require a mantra as a weapon against your thoughts.
It doesn't.
No. Instead, it relies on this brilliant two-step framework for redefining satipatthana, or mindfulness.
Okay, let's go through the steps. If I'm sitting there, my knee hurts, and the DMN is firing off anxiety about it, what is step one?
The first logical step, if we are avoiding suppression, is that you have to strip away the narrative. You have to completely ignore the content of the thought.
Okay, ignore the content, meaning I don't try to push the pain away, but I also refuse to participate in the story my brain is writing about it.
Yes, you just stop caring about the medical implications of the knee pain or how annoying it is or how much longer you have to sit there.
So I just isolate the raw data.
Exactly. It is just a physical sensation of pressure and heat. It is just a phenomenon that has arisen in this moment.
It's just a one.
It is just a one.
And if I can successfully isolate that raw data, if I acknowledge it's just a temporary physical sensation, then the natural law of impermanence has to take over.
It has to. It cannot last forever.
So the second step is literally just waiting for that specific sensation to naturally die out on its own.
Yes, you simply wait and you catch the exact moment it ends.
Huh.
Cleanly, without any judgment, your mind just registers, okay, that specific perception of pressure just now, it has ceased. It became zero.
You know, it makes me think of standing on a really busy train platform.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The train cars are zooming past you at high speed, and one cargo car is filled with physical pain, the next car is filled with anxiety about work, the next one is just some random memory from childhood.
Right, a constant stream of cars.
Yeah. And if you get involved in the content, it's like trying to sprint alongside the train, reading the shipping manifest on every single cargo door, worrying about what's inside the crates and where the train is heading.
Which sounds completely exhausting.
It is. You exhaust yourself fighting the train.
Yeah.
But stripping the narrative, that first step, means you just stand perfectly still on the platform.
You refuse to read the labels.
Exactly. You feel the wind of the cars rushing past you, but you are just waiting to acknowledge the exact moment the very last car passes you by. And suddenly, the track is clear. You are simply observing the passing, the ceasing.
That is a brilliant analogy, and here is the ultimate realization. If you stand on that platform long enough, catching those zeros day after day, the mind naturally arrives at this profound psychological payoff entirely on its own.
What's the payoff?
It realizes that the object being known, the cargo car, whether it's a throbbing knee or an anxious thought, is continuously arising and ceasing.
Right.
But more radically, it realizes that the knower is also arising and ceasing.
Wait, the knower, meaning the specific instance of consciousness that is standing on the platform observing the train?
Yes.
That is arising and ceasing too.
Absolutely. Because remember the mechanism we discussed earlier, consciousness is inextricably tied to its object.
Oh, right. The one has to have an object.
Yes. The consciousness that perceives the knee pain is literally born at the exact same time as the knee pain.
And when the knee pain drops to zero.
That specific consciousness dies right along with it. And then, the very next microsecond, a brand new consciousness is born to perceive the sound of a passing car outside your window.
Wow. That completely shatters our standard view of identity.
Hmm.
I mean, not only are my thoughts and memories not me, but even the part of my mind that is actively watching the thoughts, the observer, isn't a permanent me either.
Exactly. Neither the observed nor the observer is a permanent self.
It's all just this mechanical rhythm of nature. Hardware processing a signal that is constantly in flux.
Yes. They are just the relentless interplay of those 5 aggregates we talked about. And, while that might sound a little destabilizing at first, it is actually the ultimate form of liberation.
Because you aren't trapped by it anymore.
Right. It completely strips away the heavy burden of identifying so closely with every single physical sensation and every anxious thought that your default mode network generates.
It totally changes the entire paradigm of how we sit with ourselves.
It really does.
I mean, we started this deep dive exploring the terrifying reality of neurodegenerative diseases, questioning if the biological decay of the brain meant the absolute destruction of the self.
Right. The classical neuroscience view.
But by looking through the lens of the aggregates, we see the brain not as the generator of the mind, but simply as the receiver.
The radio interface.
Yes. And when the hippocampus breaks down, the physical expression of memory and perception in this world stops, but the underlying wave of consciousness continues.
The hardware fails, but the fundamental signal remains.
Exactly. And to actually understand that signal while our hardware is still intact, we have to completely abandon the myth of the empty mind.
We have to stop looking for the gap.
Right. The brain is built to generate meaning, and consciousness operates at lightning speed, locked in this endless binary of arising and ceasing.
A constant stream of ones and V's.
So we don't find peace by forcing the radio into silence or by chasing a void that literally does not exist. True mindfulness is just about absolute honesty regarding this impermanence.
Honesty about the ceasing.
Yeah, every single feeling, every spike of anxiety, every physical pain your brain processes, it all eventually drops to zero. You just have to stand on the platform, refuse to read the cargo labels, and watch the train cars pass.
And the ultimate freedom you find in this practice comes from simply not clinging to the ones and not fearing the ones.
That is so powerful.
When you truly internalize that the observer is just as fleeting as the observation itself, you release the desperate need to be a prominent, unchanging entity. You find a profound peace that operates completely independently of the decaying biological tissue in your skull.
Which is an incredible place to arrive at. And it leaves us with a final, really lingering question for you to ponder on your own today.
Something to mull over.
Exactly. It builds on everything we've just unpacked about the mechanics of the mind. So, if every thought is just a fleeting 1 and 0, and even the knower of those thoughts, the consciousness standing on the train platform, is constantly arising and dying away with every passing second, then who or what is the entity inside you that just made the conscious decision to listen to this deep dive?
Oh, that is a question that challenges the very foundation of who we think we are.
It really does. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this journey today and giving us your time. If you enjoyed exploring the mechanics of reality with us, be sure to follow the show for more mind-expanding explorations. Until next time, take care.